All right, we are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. I have a very special guest on tonight, Brian Brubaker, who is the recently elected mayor of Round Lake. Brian, welcome. How are you, sir?
Good. Good. Thanks for inviting me on. Appreciate
You
it.
betcha.
Doing
Yeah.
well.
So we have a mutual acquaintance, friend, Isaiah Compost, and he's the one who connected us too. So thank you, Isaiah, if you're watching. Um, tell us what I'd like to ask newly elected, whether they be incumbent or first time elected to office, is about the campaign and how that was. Because I get the impression, I've never run a camp. Oh, I did, but that was a joke. It was a long time ago. But it is that it's really a lot of work and it can be rather daunting. How was your experience during your campaigning?
That's a great question. I've done this twice now, or three times. Back in the early 2000s, I ran, but I was a trustee back then, as I am currently. I ran with Bill Gentes and a group of people, and it was funny because the campaign was pretty much run by other people, by the mayor can't. Right, I kind of was along for the ride. I was new to the landscape and didn't really know what that entailed, other than just kind of knocking on doors. Which I honestly, back then, I didn't really knock on a lot of doors because I was pretty well known in the community because I coached a lot of people's kids at football, baseball, all that fun stuff. And we were successful at that. But this time, it actually was a lot of fun. The guys that I ran with, the four other gentlemen that were successful in being elected as trustees, are really good guys. Some campaigns we would talk to, they were having minor issues between the candidates, on some vision things and stuff. And surprisingly, we were really lockstep with each other. I mean, we might have some differences of opinion, but we're all professionals in our private careers, and we really got along well. And then there was the campaigning side of it, where again we had a really good plan. We going into it, what we were going to do. We were very organized. I think all of us are very type personalities when it comes to organization. So we prior to even filing for our petition, we had meet and greet dates set and places we wanted to meet and greet. Those were strategic. We had plans of who we were going to target as far as the voters that were supporters or we needed to work on and get the word out. And and I ran the kind of the data side. I was kind of what they call a data scientist. That's what I do. I'm kind of a statistician in my current role professionally, where I look at numbers a lot all day long.
I love that, actually. I have some training in that. That's very cool.
Yeah, so I was watching the numbers and twisting pivot tables and all sorts of fun stuff with that, working with voter rolls and stuff. And then we had a gentleman, Howard Schultz, who's one of the trustees. On May 5th, he'll be sworn in. He's very strong on the marketing side. So he put together kind of our color schemes and did all of our social media posts and wordings and stuff. And I really was kind of like, that's not that big of a deal. But as we got into it, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this is really putting together a storybook. And that's what we called it, is the platform was our storybook. And what's neat with that campaign book we put together is that we can turn it after we take office, and it turns into an action plan for what we would like to see done, with direction with the other trustees to ratify some ideas going forward. So we've captured all that energy, and hopefully we can use that going forward when we get put into office to turn those plans into action.
Okay, very cool. That's great. I'm glad you had a positive experience. That's very cool.
Yeah.
So you were a village trustee for quite some time, right?
Not a long time. I think it was for 4 years or 6 years back in the early 2000s. Then I was voted out with some, like as most people sometimes are. And it was kind of when I left office, I was really busy. My wife was running the PTO. I was running the youth football and cheer program, as well as being a trustee, and I was working full time and doing a lot. And I traveled for a living. I was on the road, 3 or 4 days out of the week a lot of times, and I wasn't really taking care of myself. So when I lost in the election, was kind of a godsend. We have a hereditary disease that runs in my family that I know I have, and I took care of it somewhat. But it was time for my son to get tested. So obviously we were getting him tested. He was a little bit apprehensive about it. I said, you know what, I'm going to go in and do my retest too. And I was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer like 3 weeks after I was thrown out of office. So
Holy cats.
yeah. So luckily, we have pretty good prognosis, but that was 20 some years ago. So I, kind of slowed some things down, got my health back, but it's taken good 15, 18 years before I've started feeling a little bit normal again.
Yeah.
And then we fast forward till now, we had some high things going on in the village regarding the 57 acres that we bought 25 years ago or 20 years ago. That's kind of being used as, they call it a recycling center, but it's really just a, industrial dump site for concrete and things like that, and I guess the word recycle is appropriate to the fact that he brings in materials and then supposedly sends them back out. That's how he makes money. But it seems to be accumulating faster than it's going right now. And then we had the ski hill project that was pretty controversial, and it was very controversial in the town, and I hadn't met anybody that wanted it, and I just felt like the village elected weren't listening to the voters, or a few of them weren't, and that's how the voters felt. So we, after that vote was, we had 2 trustees that voted for it and 4 that didn't, so it died. But the town had made an agreement, that they wanted to put a grassroots effort together to run people against the people that voted for it because they didn't listen to them. And so I tried to help them in that effort during that whole process of the ski hill, because they were kind of going about it a little bit wrong. They were like hunting down where the village administrator lived to get a hold of him. And I'm like, that's not cool. That's not how you do things. You have to go to the meetings. You have to, talk in public and address and be professional. And I tried to help them craft a plan to attack that project the proper way in public. And they did, they were successful and very, very successful at it. So we were putting together a slate, and we were trying, I think we needed 5 trustees at the time, or 4, I think it was 4. And we couldn't find a 4th one. We were really just kind of trying to find somebody. No one really percolated up. And they had asked me, and I kept on telling them no. I had done my time, and my wife wasn't real excited about it again either. She wasn't excited the first time. So, and finally she said, if no one's coming ahead, maybe you should do it. And I said, well, you know what? The last position is a 2-year term. I'll take that, and then I'm done. Get 2 years done. We'll get everybody standing on their 2 feet, and then I'll bail back out. And then fast forward till a few months ago, and we were trying to put a slate together that we kind of all got together to try to figure out who was going to run. I wasn't necessarily putting my hat in the ring right away. I was thinking I was going to let that go off and return back to maybe normal life. And again, then my wife's like, you'd really be good at it. The kids are all grown. We're not too busy. I don't want you around the house so much anyway. and I do like to work. I'm in sales in general, and I like talking to people. I like putting plans together. I enjoy when things are difficult and they need to be negotiated, and being able to try to find that win-win on both sides, so that maybe everybody's not 100% satisfied, but nobody's 100% dissatisfied.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, because that's really the ultimate thing. If anybody walks away 100% satisfied, that means the other person lost, and too much. So the group decided that I would run for mayor, and that we put these other 4 gentlemen as trustees, and we kind of took off from there and put together a game plan, and it was a lot of fun, actually. We just had our last kind of campaign meeting. I said we're done meeting as a group. Now we're going to be elected. We have to be careful what we talk about, because we have open meetings acts, and we can't take action amongst ourselves. We're going to have to talk in groups of 2 or less. And as far as village business goes and things like that, and it's just going to get busy. So we're kind of bummed about that, because we've developed some really good relationships. I'm sure we'll still get together as a group, but we just can't discuss what we would like to do all the time. So that's where we were at. So, and we were very successful at it.
Clearly, because here you are.
Yeah, it's almost intimidating, to be honest,
Oh, I bet.
that it was that much. I mean, I tell everybody, I guess that was the easy part. Now we have to do the work. So
That's exactly right. So as I is sending us a waving
yeah.
hand hello as a so okay, well then that's a nice segue into my next question, which is what's your vision for Round Lake? What's on your docket right now? I mean, what immediate issues to short-term issues to long-term?
Okay. Well, it's boy, I'd love to just put everything on the plate tomorrow and get it going, but
That'd
that's
be lovely.
we're gonna have to move at the speed of government. But high level, the immediate stuff is I want to just learn the position a little. I think I have a pretty good idea what the position is. A few of the two of the trustees are previous trustees now. So they kind of know what the process is. But we have two other gentlemen that are new to it, so they're going to have a bit of a learning curve. So I'm going to try to mentor them and help them learn the landscape a little bit. And I need to learn the mayor part of it. Again, I've been in government and watched government, so I got a pretty good high level idea, but I don't really know until you get in the seat.
Sure.
And so that's what I've told staff. I'm going to come in and pay attention and try to stay out of their way as much as possible while learning and let them do their jobs. At the end of the day, we have a terrific police department. I think they're well run. I don't think anybody has any problem with that. That goes for our public works department and our administration. Really, our big things are focusing on. We have the Cedar Lake Road realignment project, which we don't have a whole lot of control with the actual project. It's coming. It's going to happen, and we think that's a great thing for the town and for the county. But it is going to disturb our downtown where a lot of our retail sales tax comes from. So we have to be very cognizant of how to lessen that impact as much as possible and try to promote our downtown to help keep those businesses viable during that project. That's one of the concerns and one of the things that's kind of high on the list, and it has been high on the list with the village for the past couple of years. My biggest thing is smart retail commercial development. We have not done a real good job of marketing our town and bringing in additional retail businesses into our town. There have been some smaller businesses here and there for the last 20 years, but 20 or 25 years ago, we brought CVS to the town, and that was big. And they're still there. Since then, the only, and I don't want to say this, tongue in cheek, but I think the next biggest development was a Dunkin' Donuts right now, which is great, but we really haven't done a whole lot since that brings in retail sales tax. We've maintained what we've had, which is incredibly good, but we really need to have smart retail sales tax. Our town, we are not home rule, so our bucket of gold that we get every year is dictated by the county. The county collects the property tax, and then they say you're going to get 11.5% or 13% or whatever that is. So when these people get their $10,000-$15,000 property tax bill, the village of Round Lake's only approximately 10% of that or 13% of that. And if our village expenses exceed that amount, we have to cut services. We can't tax people additionally. We don't have any real mechanism to increase our tax levy other than retail sales tax. That's ours. But for 20 or 30, when I was a trustee the first time, we talked about economic development, how important it was. And we really did a poor job of it back then, to be honest. It's such a fickle business. I'm not sure if any government really knows how to do it. Sometimes you just kind of get lucky, right? Like
the
Round Lake
federal
Beach.
one doesn't.
Yeah, like Round Lake Beach, they're doing a great job, but they have a lot of momentum going that direction. So I'm not, and they have a great guy running it for them. But sometimes you're kind of just on the easy button with that stuff when things kind of energize themselves, and we've got to get like those first couple steps going again. And so that's real important to us because our infrastructure. One of the things I've just kind of realized about a year ago as I was a trustee, and much so more when we were campaigning, is that our town is kind of only 30 years old. We've been around since 1908, but the population of that was relatively small. So our what we would call old town or the original housing is older, but it's pretty small. So we've been able to maintain that infrastructure relatively cheaply, right? But the big subdivisions that grew us to 19,500 people from a town of 5,000 people, those roads now and that infrastructure is now 30, 35 years old, and it's starting to get to that point where it's requiring a lot more resources to keep it up. And so we've kind of been riding that wave of kind of not free maintenance, but less maintenance. So our car has gotten so old now that we've got to do some major infrastructure, and we have to fit that into this little budget we get from the county that we can't control. So retail sales tax, retail development is going to be so important to this village in probably the next 2 to 5 years to do a lot of the things that we need to do, a lot of things we want to do. For instance, our roads, I think we just had this in our meeting. Our administrator did a great job of articulating it. I think our roads, to be on like a 20 or 25 year rebuilding plan, we have to spend approximately $5 million a year to get to every road over 20 years. We spend less than 2 million, sometimes around 1 million, 1.3, I think, this year. So every year it just gets farther and farther away from attaining that 20-year refurbishing goal, right? Because we have to live within our means. But retail sales tax won't fix that completely, but it will help that. Do those kind of things, build water towers, drill wells, fix roads, provide, great services. We have great water. We have great infrastructure with our water. We have clean water, but we need to maintain that, right? And for the safety and the health of our people, the Public Works Department does have a great job with the little that they have, and we need to be able to maybe grow them a little bit over time too, so that they can continue to provide those services to the residents as well without interruption. So those are kind of the big kind of gorillas in the room, right? That we're going to try to tackle immediately. And then the last thing kind of we ran on was transparency. I think that's a kind of a buzzword, and everybody talks about they don't understand what the towns are doing or what their government is doing, whether that's at the federal level or the county level, the township level, or the village level. And the truth is that we don't really pay attention to what's going on until it impacts our home, right? And then a lot of times it's almost too late at that point. Right. And but we can't stop trying to communicate with the voters and being as transparent as possible. And we've got some ideas with that, as far as we would like to try to stream our meetings and get them on YouTube, that so people maybe can't participate live, but they're available afterwards for them to watch. Better sound quality in our boardroom so that the audio is better. So 2 years ago when we got elected, we worked with the clerk and the administration to build social media presence. We didn't have a Facebook page and Instagram and all that, so we have that now for the last couple of years, and I think we're doing a great job with that, and we're kind of coming up to speed at that. What else are we doing? I think we need to probably overhaul our website a little bit. No one goes to websites anymore, right?
Right.
Everybody works off their phone.
You have a Facebook page.
Yeah, everybody goes to their phone and it's an app. So it's important to have a website to drive your app. But I really, and this is all costs money, of course. So that's going to have to. But it would be interesting to look into developing an app where people can interface with our Public Works Department, our police department, our admin department, our building department at some level with their problems or concerns without having to go to a website. They can do it from their phone. I think that might help with and as well as alerts. We have a robocall system where you can get emails, texts, phone calls, and voicemails that not a lot of people know is there, right? Yeah. And you can select which way you want to have it and things, but we don't really use it very much, except for say if there's a water main break or something that's pretty catastrophic, right? But why can't we do that? Like once a month, we send out a quick text or email saying, "Hey, these are our nights of the village meetings." I don't want to inundate people.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Right. But if we could send out one at the beginning of the month saying, "Hey, we're going to meet the 1st and the 3rd, 6 o'clock," just to remind everybody. I just want to be able to put my head on the pillow at the end of the night, knowing that we tried to do as much as we could to put information in people's hands and be able to tell them when they come to us, like, you just aren't paying much attention, if to be very honest with you. And we continually have to evolve that, right? Because, we have websites now, we have apps, we have texting, these are things that we never thought about 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And so we need to try to embrace those and adopt those in our programs.
Well, that's very cool. It's very forward thinking, and we have like so much like technology at our disposal nowadays. It's like there's almost no excuse to not communicate or to communicate with people, not to communicate with people. Sorry, texting and just I mean, almost everybody has one of these. Texting and emails and Facebook and Instagram and blah 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 blah. Like it's easily accessible, like almost wherever you're at because you have your cell phone. Most people do.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea to send out text like saying, "Hey, we're having a open forum or what a public meeting or whatever this day at this time at this place." That's fair. That's a great idea. I think I'm going to bring it up to the Grays Lake mayor because that's a cool idea. That's right.
And we need to learn from the other mayors too what they're doing because a lot of towns are doing great things that we need to learn from. Just like hopefully we come up with some of those things and they look at us and say, "Hey, that was a great idea. We why reinvent the wheel? Round Lake did it or whatnot." And also embrace our current businesses. We've heard this a lot, and I think we've tried to reach out to them as best we can, but there might be a communication issue there. A lot of them don't know. We would walk in and talk to them, and especially if you came in a village capacity, they kind of looked at you like, "Oh boy, what did I do now?" or "What do you need?" And I'm like, "I'm just here to talk to you. I want to know what the village can do for you. What do you need us? What can we do to help you grow, be prosperous?" And I think they really appreciate that. And we also just need to foster that with growing businesses, new businesses, and stuff as well. So we have a big thumb on the pulse of our current business districts and stuff. And I think if you talk to any of the Round Lake businesses, they've talked to at least one of the 5 people that were elected this last election, if not all 5 of us at some point. And we're hoping to continue that so that we can keep that line of communication open.
Oh, that's great. I love that. That's wonderful to hear. That's very cool. Okay. So, and how is your term like a typical 4 years?
It will be, yeah. So the most of the guys everybody will be on the 4-year rotation except for Juan DeLuna. He ran on the 2-year unexpired term due to attrition, so he'll be up for re-election in 2 years. But we've had a lot of people that have had to resign for multitudes of reasons for the last 10 years. So we've never really had a formal standard election. It's always been, the normal election plus 2 or 3 other people because we had to fill seats and stuff because there was a lot of appointments and things like that. And this was one of them too. We still had to have one person for the 2-year term. So there'll be next in 2 years, there'll be 3 trustees up for re-election or up for election, 3 seats up. And then in 4 years, it would be the mayor, clerk, and the remaining 3 trustees again. So hopefully we'll get that rotation back into normal rotation.
Well, that's very cool. Again, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I just wanted to ask 2 things. First of all, you mentioned like looking at other towns and seeing what they do to possibly learn from them. Is there any sort of like local mayoral networking going on? Is there any sort of formal setting in which the mayors of like Round Lake, Mundelein, and Grays Lake get together and talk once a year or whatever, or anything like that?
Yeah, that's one of the things I need to learn a little bit, but I actually kind of stumbled into. I knew that I've seen them meeting before. I didn't know if it was formal or whatnot, and I don't think it's like a formal, like professional group setting. But I did hear that a lot of the Lake County mayors do get together on a quarterly basis. Oh. I actually had a meeting with Dominic DiMaggio, the mayor of Hawthorne Woods, and he invited me to that group. So he's like, "I'm going to drag you into that group." And I said, "I appreciate that. I'd really like to sit down." Now, of course, the Round Lakes and the Haynesvilles, the ones that are immediately near us, a lot of them have been very graceful in reaching out to me and introducing themselves and, opening their door up for conversation in the near future once I take office. So obviously we impact each other much more quickly being neighbors, so we'll probably reach out to them a lot faster. But it would be fun to meet the Grays Lakes, the Hawthorne Woods, and people that are a little bit farther outside of our immediate circle too. I'd like to meet the people in Highwood too. One of our things with our downtown plan, the realignment, and kind of our demographic in general, is that Highwood is on my radar. That's a destination place that people go, and they just
So they have tons of really cool restaurants.
absolutely.
Tons.
And I don't know if you went where your background is. When I was growing up in Mount Prospect, and even when I moved to Round Lake in the mid '90s, Highwood was kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say it had a bad connotation to it, but it wasn't what it is now. And they've created that. They've brought commerce to them, and they do a fantastic job organizing it and promoting it to where people come from all over to go to these events. And they're very similar, I think, in size to the village of Round Lake. They have a rail system that runs through them like Round Lake. They don't necessarily they kind of have a downtown, but it's not like a square like Woodstock necessarily. And I think we're kind of where they were at 20 or 25 years ago. So if I can put what they did in a bottle and bring it home with me, I want to try to do that, because everyone's like, oh, what about Arlington Heights or Mount Prospect? Yeah, those are interesting places too, but their population's much bigger than ours. Their EAV is different than ours. Their demographic is different than ours. And yeah, sure, we'd want to be in Arlington Heights, right, with these high rises and all this retail and all this stuff going on. But do we, and can we? I don't know. You know, I'd rather look at something that's probably more feasible and probable, and that's kind of like a Highwood or even McHenry. You know, we're looking at McHenry, what some things McHenry's done with their business incubator stuff that they've been doing. Very successful, and what a neat concept. I just don't know if we have the funds to be able to get that off the books real fast and moving, but it's something we're looking at and maybe trying to replicate at some level. So
yeah, no, McHenry School. I work at McHenry 3 days a week, and they got like 3 separate like downtown areas.
Yes,
and it's very quaint and cozy and very social, and people go. They also have the river, which is a big, huge help. People like to like hang out by water. That's huge. But yeah, no, that's great. That's very cool. And when do you get sworn in?
We get sworn in May 5th at 6:00 at our 6:00 meeting on May 5th. So
wow.
It was a funny campaign thing, because everyone, first of all, most people don't know that there's a general a consolidated election. So you knock on their door and they're like, "There's an election in Round Lake?" I'm like, "Yeah, and you actually have a choice. You get a choice, which hasn't happened in a long time." And they're like, "When is it?" And you're like, "April 1st." They're like, "Get out of here! April 1st, April Fool's Day." And then like, "When do you get sworn in?" Cinco de Mayo. So they're like, "Really?"
Right, that's funny.
So. But we're looking forward to it.
Very cool. Veraxiana Anna says congrats. Is that
thank you.
Yeah. So May 5th, very cool. Couple reasons to celebrate then. You're being sworn in Cinco de Mayo. Very cool. And I wanted to ask you one more thing, okay? Because I'm big into like I do professional gardening, and I'm big into like environmental stuff. I don't know much about Round Lake. As far as agriculture goes, do you guys have farms and any sort of agricultural stuff going on there?
And not really, not in the village.
I don't remember ever seeing one.
There's some farmland within kind of our corporate boundaries, but they're not necessarily annexed into the village. They're still unincorporated. And unfortunately, if they get incorporated into the village, they're probably not going to be farms any longer. Yeah. But because I mean, the only reason they would get annexed in is for development, right? Otherwise, we'd leave them alone, and they'd like to be left alone. I'm guessing, right? And that's okay too. But we have Trustee Shotland, who sits on our board right now, and she's a current sitting trustee. She runs the seed library through our public library, and she's very involved in the environmental kind of stuff and the gardening. She's a big gardener too, and is instrumental in our Earth Day celebration coming up, and works with the Forest Preserve. I think I don't know exactly what the title is, but I believe she's a steward of the Nippersink Forest Preserve, where she is kind of tasked with putting together groups for their outings to get buckthorn out of there and things like that.
Buckthorn in Lake County. it's such a drag.
Yeah,
what is this person's name again? I'm sorry.
Trustee Carolina Shotland.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to connect me with her, because I would absolutely love to interview her.
Yeah, I would encourage you to all my trustees. They all have their niches. Kevin Strine, who just got reelected as trustee, him and his wife are one of the co-founders of the Round Lake Bike Club. So they do a lot of biking and stuff. And then John Boyk is more of on the business side of things. And then Howard's our marketing kind of guru. But we very, my circle of life doesn't really flutter around the environmental stuff. I mean, I'm environmentally friendly and I'm supportive of it.
Right.
But there's those people out there that are really into it, and do the gardening and stuff. And Caroline is one of those people that challenges me personally to look at that stronger and try to be more supportive of that with my time and stuff, as Kevin Strine is also. So there's discussions about raised bed gardening and community gardening and things where we can maybe provide some property that the village owns for people that don't have a big enough yard to garden and things like that. And I think that'd be really cool. I don't know how successful those are. We have to look around and see. I know that the Avon Township does that, and it seems to be relatively successful by them. And there's one and I don't know if Round Lake Park runs it or the Avon Township, but by Murphy School in Round Lake Park, there's quite a big community garden area there that seems to be very robust. So, I want to kind of look at those things too and see if there's something we can, build some synergies with that too as well. And then, of course, we've got Holly Kim, who's very pro chicken, and
yeah, she is. She does.
What is she? I think Isaiah calls her the chicken mafia or something like that. So we're talking about that. There's a lot of people that have some interest in that. I'm just a little concerned that we got to make sure we do it right so that everybody that isn't pro chicken isn't
froze up here. You're frozen. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear.
You were back for you're breaking up a bit. Still frozen. Give him a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you were frozen for a couple seconds.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, well, very cool. So Veraxiana is saying, yeah, the garden by Murphy is nice. Okay, very cool. Well,
yeah.
I actually taught organic gardening classes through Mundelein Park District a few years ago. So if you guys need any help, let me. I am a certified horticulturalist, so I'm bona fide.
Excellent. So, we could use the help.
Every year for the last few years, I've offered to teach organic gardening to kids, and like online, everybody's like, yeah, that's great. Well, like nobody shows up. It's such a drag. So I would love to teach, it's important, I think, especially nowadays for kids to learn about that kind of stuff, the way we're headed. They might have to grow their own food someday.
So you can learn how to do it, right? Farm to plate or hunt. I think every
farm
kid
to table. Yeah, farm to plate, farm to table.
Yeah, I think every kid should learn to fish and hunt at least one time and put the food on the plate. It gives you a different perspective of how 100%. Food gets to the table, right? You may never use it again. Hopefully you don't, but it gives you an appreciation of what it takes to get it to your plate in a simple manner, right? And it's not simple. Even gardening, there's a pretty big investment in the front side to get a carrot on your plate, right? Like,
yes, there is. It's a lot of time and energy for one carrot.
Yeah. Constant nurturing, right? Especially in our climate, where you can't garden 3 or 4 months out of the year unless you had an indoor space. So you really have to harvest quickly and fast and save up for the off. I can't imagine what settlers were like back in the days before refrigeration and stuff.
I think about that a lot. I'm like, I feel so like blessed that I live nowadays with like running water and plumbing and showers and
Right. Well, that's part of our Round Lake history is the Alpine Country Club on the lake. That was the ice house, and that's why they brought the rail system to Round Lake. They harvested ice off the lake, stored it at the Alpine Country Club, that was the ice house, and they trucked it in on boxcars on the train into the city for people's refrigeration back in the
They had to put the big ice things underneath, like on the bottom of the refrigerator, and it kind of kept it.
Yeah. I mean, think about
that. Like the term ice box comes from. Yeah.
And there was no Yeti back then. So how long did that ice last you, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's great. We're at about 35 minutes here, so I think it's a good time.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Brian. Congratulations on your victory. It sounds like you have a promising 4 years coming up, and you have some good visions going on, and that's very cool. So maybe we can keep in touch. And if you just hang on after I end the show, I want to just ask you about this trustee again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But thank you again for coming on, and good luck to you and all that you do. Varick Siana says best of luck. So,
Yes,
all right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Let's Talk Lake County. I'm your host, David Rich. Again, one more thanks to Brian Brubaker, recently elected mayor of Village of Round Lake. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you next time, folks. Till next time, take care. Hold on one second.
Yep.
There's a delay, so hold on.